Just like that, we're back. Hey Spoke fam, welcome back to episode 2 of Well Spoken here on Spoak TV. Do you like our new logo? Please say yes, we love it. It's so cute and brand new. I'm Carrie, I'm your host, and I'm super excited to be bringing you episode 2 of Well Spoken, which also happens to be our last episode of the year because it is December 2021, which is so crazy. With that in mind, and given the timing, we wanted to bring you an episode that really made sense for this timing and sort of felt right for the whole new year, new you sort of thing. Whether or not you're actually doing that, it does not matter. So our big topic of this episode today is all about decorating a space from scratch, or almost scratch, depending where you are in your process. Whether you're moving into your first place ever or just a new place and just needing or wanting to start fresh, maybe your style has changed, or maybe it's just time to replace some furniture that you've had since college, whatever that might be, I am gonna give you some tips and best practices from my own experiences and also inspired by things that our community has shared on how to decorate your space from scratch and sort of create a master game plan. Like I said, what inspired this episode is really the timing of sort of the new year, but also a lot of what we've been hearing in the Spoke community, which is that decorating a space from scratch is very difficult. I've definitely been through that, and you likely have too, or maybe you're in it right now or about to be in it. But you guys have shared with us that you're experiencing a lot of purchasing paralysis, where you feel like maybe you can't decide on a rug because you don't know which color to paint your wall, or maybe you can't decide on a sofa because honestly half of them are out of stock right now or super back ordered. And on top of that, you're probably feeling pressured to buy 1 million things at the same time, or impatient about the idea of having to wait for one thing before you buy another thing, or just stressed about the entire process and really wanting to be done. We totally get you, and that's why we're sharing today's episode. So ahead, you're gonna see our, I think, 5 master tips to help sort of solve this issue, and obviously we will be including all of the Spoke tools that help solve these problems along the way. Like I said before, consider this your game plan, your checklist, whatever you wanna call it, for decorating a space from scratch. Here we go. All right, with that, let's jump right in to tip 1. I should also say that this and tip 2 kind of go hand in hand. Some of you might have a very clear idea of what you're going for. You might have your interior design style down to a T, and in that case, you can totally skip right to tip 2. This leads us to our very first tip, which is to narrow down your interior design style and a basic idea of the vibe you want to emulate and recreate in your space. So, what is finding your interior design style look like, really? Overarchingly, it's browsing, it's looking, it's absorbing and seeing and interacting with as many spaces as you possibly can to get a general idea of where your preferences are taking you. And are you gravitating towards this space in particular because you just like it, or because that's how you want your personal space to look like? I think those things are also very distinct as well. Obviously, one major place to do that is social media and all of the things that fall under the social media umbrella. A really obvious place, I think, is gonna be Pinterest. Personally though, I prefer Instagram. The algorithm knows me so well, like way too well.
Or to make things even better, you can browse Spoke's Thingology feed, which has a ton of images and products and interior spaces and inspiration and really everything you need to start curating a space.
That's all to say that if you are not a big social media person, my other suggestions in that case would be to browse interior design related magazines like Domino or Architectural Digest. There's also TV shows that you can watch. Spoak TV, we're looking at you. There are 1,000,001 design books in the world, and you can also browse furniture stores in person. Save as many things as you possibly can. Don't worry about saving things that need to make sense all at one time. Just save everything that you like, and then you can go revisit those things and sift through them later. And this should totally go without saying, but you also don't have to notice only one design style that you like and pick one that you like. You can pick several and figure out how to make those things make sense later on. Obviously, this is a perfect place to give a little Spoke plug, because the Spoke Signs quiz does almost exactly this and can help you find your interior design style as told by a number of signs, sort of like your zodiac sign, but for interior design. There's some super cute illustrations, there's a lot of fun photos that can help you decide which styles that you're liking, and it does a great job of covering a lot of what is out there. So highly recommend that. I am a Lynx, so if you are also a Lynx, let me know, and let's follow each other on Spoke, and that is where we lead into step 2. Okay, right on into tip 2, which is one of my favorite things to do, I think, which is to create a mood board. Essentially, this step is really just more finitely narrowing down what you want to emulate in your space from step 1, but this, in my opinion, is sort of where you take more specific things into account and spend maybe a little bit more time curating the images that go on your mood board. So what do we mean by finding the vibe or the look that you want to emulate in your space? That could be a couch and a rug color combination. It could be a style of dining chairs. It could be a cozy corner. It could be a vignette in your entryway. A bunch of different things. Really, you're finding images within your preferred style or styles to gain more clarity towards what direction or directions that you want to take your space in real life, which can be hugely helpful before you jump into purchasing everything. Now, in this tip, I have 2 more tips that I think are pretty helpful and things that I actually use in practice. Pay close attention to consistent themes or must-haves in your space. These can be the actual jumping off point when you start purchasing. For example, if all your images have a cream-colored couch in them or a burlwood credenza, that might help you figure out the thing that you might want to start with, which can help you then sort of build on your space. On the flip side of that, if you definitely want a gray couch or you already have a gray couch, or for example, if you're in a rental and your walls are light gray and you cannot repaint them whatsoever, or you don't want to, but all the images that you're putting in your mood board are of really bright white spaces where the walls are white, that might throw things off. So I think that finding similarities in the images you're putting in your mood board to your actual space when those things are non-negotiables is really helpful for kind of keeping a realistic perspective of what something is going to look like and also help you make more informed decisions. Again, this is another perfect place to plug Spoak here because it has really, really amazing mood boarding tools and color palette tools. Go on over to Spoak's vibe board section or their color palette section. You can use color palette. You can pop into Spoak, use these tools, and just continuously add things as you go, make new ones, or put them all in a big project that you can refer back to when you're on a later phase of your project. Now it's time for tip 3, which is to build your space, but do so strategically. Now is the time when you can start creating your plan of attack, aka turning what is on your screen into your actual space. I typically recommend starting with one piece or a few to use as your jumping off points rather than sort of like fully jumping in all at one time and getting everything at one time. That's really stressful, it's really expensive, and it can lead to sort of mistakes, if you want to call them that, or having to do returns. And specifically when starting with one piece or a few, I typically recommend that that might either be your biggest piece or your biggest statement piece or also the most essential. Those things can also overlap, and that could be, for example, a sofa. Say you want like a velvet orange sofa, but basically whatever fits into that category for you is where you're gonna wanna start. And then from there, you can move on to other pieces. Either, again, the ones that are most essential if that's the route you wanna take, or even just the ones that you're most excited about. Doing everything in steps and thinking of it as sort of an entire process is really helpful versus an all at one time sort of thing. This is also the perfect time to hop into Spoak's Visi tool and create either a room Visi or a product collage and start designing your space digitally. This leaves so much room to experiment and get creative and try a bunch of things without having to actually commit. Furniture is big, it's expensive, decor pieces can be expensive, returns are annoying, and this is the perfect opportunity to see if you like the way that something looks with something else or not. It's also just a good way to keep track of all of your products, especially because you can input the information into Spoak without having to have a Google Doc, or in my case, sometimes I'll use an email or a note in my notes app to keep track of links, which gets super messy. And now for tip 4, let's talk budgeting. This can happen in tandem with tip 3 or before, or it can even be like the very, very first part of your process. But creating a budget can really help inform your decisions, inform your timeline, and just inform the overall process. Maybe you have an absolute total and limit in mind or pre-saved, or maybe you're going to allocate a specific amount of your paycheck after all of your normal expenses to putting towards a design and decor budget. Either way, this can be really, really helpful for guiding your entire process, where you're shopping, and how and when all of that stuff is happening. For example, if you're on a tighter budget, buying secondhand can be really great, and looking towards things like thrift stores and flea markets and Facebook Marketplace as well. That also means though that it might affect your timeline. You might be looking for the perfect piece for longer than you might if you were just searching the internet and like the Wayfairs and West Elms of the world. And as you're adding products in Spoak on the Thingology feed, there is a spot to put the price, so that is really helpful to reference. And that perfectly brings us to our last tip, tip number 5, which is to phase things out. Now that you have your budget and your plan in place, you can actually start purchasing or DIYing or thrifting or renovating or any other step. But doing these things in phases can be super important and help things not feel too overwhelming and stressful. It's really tempting, especially when you're moving into a new space, to want it to be done at one time and to feel like you're settled and it's homey and everything, but that's not always super realistic, and I really admire the people that can like move into a place and have it done in like the first few weeks. But if you're starting from scratch, that is, I think, by default a little bit more difficult. What I talked about before, also phasing things out of necessity can be really important too, especially as you're designing. For example, if you want to put things on your walls, but you need to paint your walls first, you're obviously going to want to do that first, and you might as well do the base of all things first. I know this might sound too much like work, but thinking of your space and furnishing it and decorating it as a process and creating a timeline to go along with that can be really helpful and make it easier to achieve little goals along the way, and instead of thinking of decorating as just like one big thing that you have to get done at the same time. It's just a fun way to have things to check off your list, have things to be working towards, and also a way to stay on budget and stay sane at the same time. I think that's it. I think that's all we have for you in this video. I hope that these tips were helpful. I would love if you guys would sound off in the comments and include any of your other tips for starting from scratch, any best practices that you guys have learned along the way that can help other Spoke members or other people in a new space that they want to decorate, or head over to the Spoke Slack channel where the community is always on, and it's a really fun place to be. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to episode 2 of Well Spoken on Spoak TV. So excited about that still. We will see you guys very soon for episode 3. We hope you enjoyed. Please feel free to keep leaving feedback, and thanks for watching. All right, bye guys.